Autry and Sheree Mathis from CPS to talk about kinship care.
Awesome. My name's Kelly. I've been with the agency for about 3.5 years. I know Miss Marilyn. We worked a case together. I was a conservatorship worker for about 2.5 years, and then I decided to switch on over to the helping. Not that we didn't help in conservatorship, but it was a lot of hostility and anger in some situations, which I'm sure you all have encountered. So I flipped over to the kinship side, where I help the caregivers and make sure that they have everything that they need in order to assist some of their relatives or kids that they've known for most of their lives. Anyway, and this is Sheree. Sheree and I both cover 7 counties. So we have Brazos, Burleson, Leon, Grimes, Robertson, Madison, Washington. And if I missed one, somewhere around here. In this location, that's what we have. Anyway, I was just going to give a little tidbit. I was telling Miss Mason that I am not a trainer. Never been a trainer before, so you'll have to bear with me. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we do and why I feel like we are so important, and I think it's helpful for Acosta to know kind of what is going on with us. Yes, ma'am.
You cover those counties in terms of the placements or where the children
The
are from?
placement. The placement, yes, ma'am. So we have different legal counties across the board. So, and I'll explain to you how all the referrals come in and all of the process of what happens. So, I've never had a clicker thing, so here we go.
Pretty fancy.
I know, I like it. I just want to like point at things. Okay, I have here, what does a kinship caregiver look like? I tried to add all the different pictures and different various types because a lot of people just assume grandparents, just typically, and we do have a lot of grandparents. Recently, I've had siblings, 24, 25-year-old siblings take in 3 or 4 of their younger siblings, and they're actually really amazing caregivers. They know the whole gamut of how it all happened. They were involved. And whenever they were younger. So we also have aunts, we have fictive kin, and I'll explain a little bit more about what fictive kin means if you guys aren't really familiar with it. But here's this nice little picture. Oh, so we have great-grandparents. I have a lot of great-grandparents that have stepped up taking care of their great-grandchildren. This is a slide that I just think is so cool from Mr. Rogers, and just saying that the kinship caregivers are heroes, and I truly believe this from the bottom of my heart that they are heroes. They step in when another family member or someone can't, and they do the unthinkable, and typically they go very unappreciated. They're very low on the totem pole. They're left out of a lot of things. So that's why we step in and try to help them out. So a kinship caregiver, really short, it's a relative or fictive kin who steps in whenever we have a child in our custody. It's different if we don't have a child in our custody, if we're working with like FBSS cases. Yes, ma'am?
What is a fictive?
Yes, ma'am. I will explain to you what that is. What does fictive kin mean? Here we go. So for instance, you have a neighbor, say you grew up, or say you have a neighbor next door and you always watch their kids and you've known them for years, you would be qualified as a fictive kin. So if we couldn't find a relative, we would treat you just the same, like you are family essentially without blood. A note here that a long-standing relationship, and I'll further emphasize on that, if you just met this child, more than likely we're not going to be like, hey, can you please take this kid? Because if you just met them, you don't have any idea of the dynamics of the home, of the history, or anything like that. So we prefer to have a long-standing relationship, and that also would qualify as what fictive kin is. Oh, little animation there. Something went terribly wrong with this family. I just thought that was a really hilarious picture. So, as a relative, it can be by blood or it can be through adoption. So if, say, this child was adopted and their adoptive grandmother would be considered blood and family is what we're going to call them. Relative, I'm sorry. And it cannot be the legal parent. If we're placing back with a family member or with a mother or a father, clearly that's not going to be a relative any longer. That is the parent. And that's about it with that. Does anybody have any questions about relatives or fictive kin? I'm kind of going through these kind of quickly to get to the meat of the source. Here we go. All right, the long-standing and significant relationship. They must have knowledge of the child, how the family works, experiences and values, and they must have observed development. Typically, these are our reporters as well, which we don't say who our reporters are, but most of the time we have reporters that call in and then we end up contacting them. Kind of works out that way. Can anyone tell me what a benefit of a kinship caregiver or kinship care might be?
Keeps them out of the system.
Right?
Keeps them with their family.
Yes, exactly. Here's a whole bunch of them, and you've said 2 of them. Obviously, if you place with family, you're going to enhance family connections. I have a 4-year-old. If I'm out for some reason, if I call my mom, she is just as happy to go with my mom as she would be to me. So if something were to happen, that would be the closest to how I would do things would be with my mom or with my aunt or my cousin, something like that, you know. So it enhances family traditions. We have healthy relationships with these children. They go through less trauma typically when they are placed with a family member for clear reasons. And it gives them a sense of stability because most of the time they're used to being with grandma anyway. I don't know how many cases that we've had where grandma has typically raised them anyway. So this is no different. We're just involved. It makes it just a little bit more paperwork and a little more people inside of their house. All right. So what do you do exactly? I don't know how many times I get that question. Like, what do you do? We are known as kinship development workers. We go in and we work with these caregivers. Some of these caregivers have not been caregivers in 20 years. So things have changed since then. So we go in and we help with developmental milestones. We help with teaching about technology because we have 16-year-olds that are on Facebook, you know, and I want to teach them how things work. And I also we also keep them fully involved in what's going on in the legal case. We use a lot of acronyms, so most of the time a caregiver's like, I have no idea what FGDM is, FGC, and all PCA, and all of these things. So we go through and we break them down. So typically, whenever we have a court hearing, I meet with I meet with my kinship caregiver directly after, and we figure out what happened exactly, and I put it in the most layman terms as possible. All right, so this is the order of events. It doesn't always go this way, but typically is where we go. So we have a removal. Court is required. A lot of people don't know this, but court is required to attempt to find someone that the caregiver or that the parents know and that the children know. So the caregivers usually, the parents provide a caregiver resource form. Has everyone seen one of those? No? Well, this happens usually in investigations. They have a document and they have just blanks, 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 and they give out names of people they know. So that's where we start in trying to find these family members. And a lot of times we'll do a temporary placement right when we remove until we can do a full out home study. So we'll have a kinship, or say we find a relative and we're saying, hey, this is great. We'll do a walk through the home, we do background checks, make sure everything's great. And usually once that's done, a kinship referral is made, and boom, that's where we come in and we talk to them about benefits and whatnot. So then we have our wonderful family group conference typically where everybody gets together and they're going to make the family plan of service for the parents. We already have the caregiver there. They know what's going on. And this is all an idealistic case. That's how it happens. And then we have our home assessment. Once the home assessment's completed, we get results. This is where we work a lot behind the scenes, and a lot of people don't ever see us, but we work a lot with the conservatorship worker, and we address those concerns to try to make that home good. So if they need child-proof locks, we got them. They need medicine lockups or medicine lock boxes, we'll get those, and we just address any concern. We make a developmental plan that most people don't really see because we work hand in hand with the caregiver to ensure that those are mitigated, those concerns are mitigated, and then they go to be approved. And that's whenever we have an approved kinship home. And that's when we can get them benefits, and I will explain those in further detail as well. Now, what happens if we have a court order placement? Does anyone know what happens with kinship? We don't offer any benefits other than we do case management. We can get foster angels involved where we can get different community resources, and that's a lot of the times when we really need CASA to like help us out with the home because we're kind of strapped because we don't have an approved home study. Does that make sense? Somewhat. All right. So when we meet, This is where we talk about fostering connections. Has anyone heard of fostering connections? Ever? All right.
Sure.
Yeah, we don't get it, I guess. This is a lot of behind the scenes work. So in 2008, there was a law that was passed, and there's a lot more to this law, but I only wanted to briefly touch on what we do on this side and why it's so important. But it's trying to improve the care of the children in these homes whenever they're separated from their families. Because they're taking on probably 2 new mouths to feed. I have some with 5 new mouths to feed. And it's trying to pay for those things and take care of those things. So this is where we offer permanency care assistance. And I will go through what permanency care assistance is, how they get it, and we'll go through that part right here. Oh no, did I push the button? Oh, here we go. Okay, and this is what we call PCA. So you'll hear a lot about, has PCA been talked about? Has PCA been talked about? And this is a really big deal because this is whenever we are talking about permanent managing conservatorship. Does everybody know what permanent managing? Okay, just make sure I don't need to go back. So if I have a case and I've met with my caregivers, and from the get-go, I am talking to the CPS caseworker, and they are telling me that these kids will not be going home. It's almost 100% sure these have history of family CPS intervention, and it's just more than likely they're not going home. I'm immediately going to sit with these caregivers and I'm going to tell them all about PCA, and I'm going to emphasize all about it. What they do is, if I quit pushing that button, what they'll do is they'll apply to become foster parents. They will take our Pride classes, or they can go through Renaissance, or they can go through Arrow. There's all kinds of individual child placement agencies that will get them licensed as caregivers, as foster parents. Once they become licensed, they'll take Pride classes. They'll do the whole gamut of trainings. They take Pride classes. They have that kid in their home for 6 months. So if we're going towards permanent managing conservatorship, once they have them for 6 months, we will negotiate a deal. Not we, an attorney will negotiate a deal with them, and they will sign an agreement that this caregiver will receive $400 to $545 until the child is 18 years old. Does that make sense at all? Mm-hmm. Okay, just making sure. It's super important, as you can see, because if we have permanent managing conservatorship, some of these cases we're telling these caregivers, hey, there's nothing we can do. After they get permanent managing conservatorship, you're kind of going to have to foot the bill. So with this program, if they complete the trainings and they become licensed, they will receive this until they're 18. And it's good for savings, it's good for whatever they need to do, just taking care of the child.
And that's after the training or after the training and 6 months?
After the training and 6 months. So sometimes we'll have an extension in the case until we can finish this. Because what happens is while they're becoming foster parents, if the case is towards the end, we will take PMC. We'll take permanent managing conservatorship, and then we'll give it back to them. Because these negotiations have to be made prior to them obtaining PMC. So I think it's really awesome. And there's a lot more information in it. I put it in the packets so you can have and you can read about it. This is not always the case. I mean, this is mainly going to be if we are not terminating. If we are terminating and we're going towards adoption, the adoption assistance is the same amount of money. So this is completely separate from adoption. This is only if we're going permanent managing conservatorship route. Does anybody have any questions? This gets really confusing at times. All right. Okay. So the benefits will continue till they're 18. And this is where the tricky part comes in. If this happens after they're 16 years old, they will receive those benefits until they're 21. So, and it says here that it's the same as the adoption assistance. So the same if a kid is adopted at the age of 16 years old, they will receive benefits until they're 21 years old as well.
The family will?
Yes.
If they stay living with them.
Right. And that was a question that we were talking back and forth. If anyone knows Benjamin Glade, mm-hmm. He's a foster adoption worker. He said he was not sure if they would continue to receive the payments if they move out. So he was gonna get back to me on that, but I don't have the answer to that. But that's where we kind of stood, as long as the child remains in the placement. All right, kinship reimbursement and integration payments. This is mainly what we're working with a whole lot. Now, you know how I said that the kinship caregiver or the kinship placement has to be authorized as a placement. That's once the home assessment's completed, we've done the necessary work to mitigate the concerns, then we have a kinship, approved kinship home, correct? So that's the only way we can go towards this. Without an approved kinship home, or if the home assessment's denied and we're not going to approve it, we will not do this. So not every home is gonna be qualified for this. So I ask a lot of whenever I'm doing different presentations for investigations, I request please do not say anything about the money until we know that they're gonna be qualified. Because what happens is Cherie and I walk into a home and someone first says, okay, where's my money? So it gets really difficult to go further from there. So we're kind of stuck. So I ask, talk to us or talk to us if you know your kinship worker, and we'll let you know if they're qualified, and we can all work together to make sure that they get their money, you know. And I'll explain what money we get. Okay, reimbursement payment. This is only up to $500 a year per child. So whenever we go in, we have a list, and we say clothing, you know, if they need high chairs, strollers, beds, cribs, and they'll fill out all the money that they are going to pay in that whole year, which is never going to be accurate. No one knows exactly how much you're going to spend in a year. So they'll fill it out. We only reimburse up to $500, and that begins at the date of the placement and ends 12 months later. So say we have a case where the caregiver, say we're in an extension and the caregiver still has the child and it's been 12 months. We give another payment of $500. So, but this one is only, let's see, and it continues after we give PMC if we don't do the PCA. So say we don't do PCA, then they'll get those $500 per child for the next 3 years.
What is 300% of the poverty line?
I got that for you. Here we go. This is going to be, you're going to go across here. So say we have 5 people in the house, $86,000. As long as they make less than $86,000, they will qualify. All right. The next payment we have is the one-time payment, and it's going to be $1,000 per sibling group, and then $495 for each sibling. So if we have a group of, let's see which one I can do off the top of my head. So if we have a group of 4 kiddos, they're going to get $1,000 for the sibling group, and then $495 for each child, excluding the oldest. So, and that'll be a one-time payment. So I guess 4 kids would be what, $44.85, I think. So they would get a one-time payment of $4,485. That's added. Is that added with the integration payment? I mean, the reimbursement payment. Okay, and that's with the reimbursement payment. Does that make sense? Okay, so say we have, let's do one kid, because I can do that one off the top of my head. So if we have it $1,000 for that one child, and then we'll have $500 for the reimbursement payment for that one child. So they'll get $1,500. So if we have 2 children, we'll get $1,495 for the one group and for the sibling. So you'll get $1,495 plus the $1,000, so it'll be $2,495. But this one is only a one-time payment. So if we have a placement with 2 kiddos and we pay them, say they've been approved everything, we've gotten them money, and then the kid moves in 2 months, which just happens all the time, that next placement would not get this one-time payment because the caregiver prior had already been paid, but they would still probably qualify for the reimbursement payment as long as the home study and everything is approved.
This is after they've been licensed.
This is not licensing. I'm sorry, this is just in regular everything. I apologize. This is just kinship care. As long as the home assessment is approved and we have approved the home as a placement. I know it's a lot of information.
Well, I just don't remember my family. I thought she got like $200.
$200?
Yeah, for the last year.
Wow.
So.
Okay. Is the family here?
Mhm.
Okay. We'll get with us after and let me know who they are.
Okay.
So,
Do you have a lot of families who take this money and then shortly thereafter, whatever reason, the child is not with them?
yes. Yes, we do. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it.
What are the reasons why you wouldn't do the PCA?
We would not do PCA if we're leaving for termination. If we were terminating rights and we were going towards adoption, there would be no reason to do a
If
PCA.
the family, the kinship people were the ones adopting,
Mm-hmm.
they would not get, I thought they would get the continued amount of money for them.
They'll get the same thing for adoption.
Okay.
So yes, ma'am, if they're going towards adoption, and that's where we know we're going, and everybody's on board, say we've talked to CASA, everybody is going for termination, the judge is not very happy. I don't want them to have to go through all these trainings and all of these classes to become licensed whenever they could go very short and then get the adoption subsidy. But not every kid qualifies for adoption subsidy either. You know, the whole 2 and younger, do y'all know about? No. Okay, well, let's see. I don't know if I know all of them. Okay, if a child is white and has no issues at all, they have to be 6 or older in order to receive adoption assistance. Does that make sense? And then if there's a sibling group, then they would be able to receive the assistance. And then this is not my work area, but the whole means behind it is children that are 6 and younger, there's a long list for white children to be adopted, and it's horrible to say, but that's how the world kind of is right now. So we don't offer money for kids that are easily adopted. So we try to assist with sibling groups and whatnot. All right, so this is the household size and other assistance that we have. We have Foster Angels, which is an amazing resource that we have in Austin that we're able to ask for, like bunk beds, clothing vouchers, anything that we're kind of needing. And we use them quite often whenever whenever caregivers do not, whenever we can't get their home approved. So I'll reach out to different resources to try to get them assistance. Casey Funds helps out a lot with paying for bills, electric bills. People get behind on different bills. And community resources, which we reach out to you guys quite a bit as well. And emotional support. And we have monthly kinship meetings where all of our caregivers get together and discuss issues that they're having. They work together to come up with different solutions to problems. And they're kind of in the same situation, so it helps them out to get together and meet. But that is all I have. And I thought that I could carry it for an hour, but there's no way, Miss Mason.
That's okay.
Yes,
It was
ma'am.
really good information. I know they have a lot of questions.
Yes, ask away. I will answer them to the best of my ability.
The family I'm working with lives in North Houston, and they're on their 3rd kinship worker, so things are not progressing very quickly.
Uh-huh.
So and then they found out they had bunk beds provided through the attorney of item bound for them. Then they found out the bunk beds had bed bugs in
Oh,
the
no.
crevices and they had to ditch them.
Okay.
And now they need bunk beds, but they're in north part of Houston. That angel group,
Mm-hmm.
who would do that? It has to be the kinship worker doing
It would be the kinship worker. Do you know if Foster Angels is for, or is it just for Region
I
7?
think it's Region 7.
Okay, they might have a different group because that's Region 6. So we'd have to ask. But they also they should have a child welfare board that gets together around there.
Houston.
Talk to your kinship caregiver and ask them what resources. They are going to be your resource guru, I guess, to talk about.
It's been dragging on for a long time, and with the changeover in personnel, it's not progressing.
I don't know. Yeah, I would just do you have a close communication with the kinship?
I haven't ever talked to the kinship
Right.
worker, but I will.
Yeah, I would definitely get in touch with her and see what they have for you. Kevin?
I did have a question. Did I pick up on a difference between kin or fictive kin being awarded PMC and that could be with or without termination, is that right?
Can you say that one more time?
Well, you said something about only if we're going for termination will this happen. So somewhere along that, I missed the
Okay,
thread of the thought there about.
let's see, I'm not sure what you're asking, but I'm thinking, are you asking if the difference between relative and fictive kin?
No, I understand that.
Okay.
'Cause I've worked with both.
Right.
Situations. But does there have to be termination in order for PNC to be awarded, I guess is what I'm saying?
No,
Okay.
we typically would not terminate if we have PMC. That would.
Really?
Right. If
That's
we're,
the
if
only
we're,
way I've ever
if
done
we're
it.
going, we have PMC we can do PMC where we keep PMC.
Right.
I feel like I'm saying PMC over and over again. Or we can do PMC, PC. That's typically where we're working with, where we would not take full rights of the parents, but they would have a very set order. Like visitation would be very much restricted. I guess it's kind of like in a little, it's hard to say because it's all, I'm thinking of different specific cases. But we do PMC, PC to parents all the time with us over in Brazos County. We'll do like permanent managing conservatorship to the caregiver and PC to the parent, and they would be able to have PCA benefits. Does that make sense? Am I answering your question?
I'm just trying to relate that to the two actual cases that I've worked, that one was kinship placement,
Uh-huh.
and they were awarded full custody, and parents' rights were terminated.
Parents' rights were terminated, so they just went PMC. Do you know
PMC.
why they didn't adopt?
Well, they were great-grandparents.
Okay. Hmm.
And at the time, I guess it just wasn't on anybody's
Got it.
radar for them to
Got
actually
it.
adopt.
Yes, ma'am.
The other case was a fictive kin. They did eventually adopt, but they were awarded PMC after termination as well.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. No, it happens. I haven't worked with one in a really long time. So there doesn't have to be termination to obtain
Okay.
PMC. No, ma'am.
That's what.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I'm like, wait, hold on. Is there any other?
If the family income is above, the
The 300%?
300%, none of this applies.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
And does the household size include the child or
Yes,
sibling
ma'am.
group that's, okay. I guess I was confused. I was still trying to work with the CPS worker when really the kinship worker had taken over. Do y'all still work
We
with
work together.
CPS? Is there a point where, okay, now our correspondence should be with the kinship?
You can
Worker
correspond with
or-
both of us. We work with the conservatorship worker. We never work alone. So
Okay.
there's always either an adoption worker or there's a conservatorship worker or an investigator still involved. So they handle the legal aspects. We are here for the caregiver.
Okay.
So whenever I go in, I know about the case itself, so I can help the caregiver out on where we're going. But I don't stand in court and talk to the judge anymore about family plans of service or anything like that. Yes,
And
ma'am.
Lori Ferguson is your supervisor?
No, ma'am. My supervisor is Thea Burns. She's out of Waco.
Okay, so
Yes,
there's
ma'am.
different
Yes, ma'am.
supervisors. Okay.
Yes, I know it gets really
Because now I've been
complicated.
told, no, you don't talk to Benjamin anymore, you talk to Lori because it's moved on to the next stage. I'm like,
Okay.
okay.
Right. Yeah, no, that's what
Just
happens.
tell me who
because
to talk to.
there's so much in each one of our units that there's no way possible for one person to do all of it. So there's always so many people. Yes, ma'am.
My child, as you know, because you made it happen, is in relative placement and has been for a year and a half, and she has not received one penny. She's getting ready to adopt the child, and then she will
She will.
receive money.
Mhm.
But she, by choosing not to take the foster, to go have the foster care training,
Mhm.
she could have been having money
Right.
all this time.
She could have been. And she would be treated as a foster home.
Yes.
And that foster home, it's different though, whenever they become a foster home, they get paid more than this, $500. So until the time being. So we always give that out, hey, you guys can still become licensed even if we are going for adoption, but I'll tell you, if we are going for adoption, like, you're gonna have to do a whole lot more work, and by the time we're even done, we may not even be, we may be at the very end of the case. So,
Well, this makes me sad. She's so strapped
Right.
for money and hasn't had anything for a year and a half and an extra child.
Right.
A 10-year-old. in
Right.
her home.
that requires a lot.
No.
that child
I
does.
mean, I feel like I might have let her down by not pushing for something, I don't know. Pushing for her to go to,
To
I
be
think we just
licensed.
thought it would all happen much faster.
Well, it was supposed to.
Yeah, it just drug out.
That case was supposed to.
But even to be licensed to be a foster parent could have been drug out that long,
Oh, I guess
as
so.
long as.
Because she would have to be in the home for 6
Mine's
months.
already a year.
It doesn't count
No,
from when they were
really?
first placed, it
No,
counts
ma'am.
from after the
It
training.
comes from whenever they have completed the training and become a licensed foster
Is the
placement.
training offered at night too? And
It is, it comes at different times, so we have, Renaissance will do it on Saturdays, and you can take them in pretty much any order to get the classes done. They require 35 hours of training.
Both
For
parents or just?
both parents have to be there. Both
Do they have
parents.
to be there at the same time?
Yes, they have to take the class. I mean, I don't know if they could go separately. That'd be a Renaissance question, but I can ask. I would assume that they would have to take the trainings together, though.
Is childcare provided?
For Renaissance, I'm not sure, because since that's outside the agency. But with us, for kinship caregivers, it's only 18 hours of training. And we don't have childcare. And it's typically on Tuesday, Thursday, and one Saturday, and then another Tuesday, Thursday. And then they would become licensed.
I don't understand the difference. One's foster care that's not related at any, and the other is kinship care?
Okay, whenever you're becoming licensed, if you go through another agency other than us, if you go through Renaissance, in order for them to be paid as a placement agency, you would have to become a licensed foster placement through them. They require the full 35 hours. That would be as if, say, if you wanted to go become a licensed foster placement, you would have to take the full 35 hours. They don't have a specialized kinship program to give you the less hours. Now, if you go through us, we can meet minimum standards by going 18 hours for kinship caregivers. So that's where the difference.
And when you talk about them and us, are you essentially talking about, aren't they a private company in your
Right.
state?
Yes,
So a
Exactly.
private company
And who
versus,
decides who they're
the
going
caregiver.
to?
It's just really whatever their flexibility is as far as their scheduling and whatnot.
isn't the cost a lot more for the private or
No.
not? No.
So if a child's been placed with a fictive kin,